Welcome to the Photo Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Grace Costa, a photographer of over 2 decades and a business and marketing mentor for commercial photographers. If you're looking to build a booked out business and become an in-demand photographer who is respected and valued, you're in the right place. Thanks for joining me today. Let's open the latest diary. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Photo Diaries podcast. Great to have you here. Today I want to take you through the WPPI Conference summary. I want to summarize the trip. So first of all, some of you may not have even heard of this acronym, but WPPI stands for Wedding Portrait Photographers International, and it's a huge 5-day conference over in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I've heard about it for many years, but never considered going until last year. A newsletter came through my inbox, announcing that the keynote speaker would be my idol, my favorite photographer of all time, Annie Leibovitz. And I thought, holy smokes, that's kind of good, but that's kind of bad because it means I'm going to have to fly to America to go and see her. I wasn't keen on going overseas, especially on a long haul flight like that, especially leaving my little daughter. She just started kindergarten. And I thought, oh God, the last thing I want to do is be on a 14-hour flight. But you know what? Sometimes when something is so important to you and it means a lot, you kind of sacrifice all the sort of shit sandwich to get what it is that you want. And what I wanted was to meet Annie Leibovitz, be in the same room as her, learn from her, just be in her presence. So I had to make it happen. And my husband, my mother-in-law also, all pitched in to make sure that I was able to go away without a hitch, and that Sophie could be taken to school and back, and it all worked out. But I will admit, I was really nervous actually going over there. Not the fact that the conference I wasn't going to know anybody except one person that I knew who was very well known over there in WPPI space. She's one of the judges. She's a friend of mine. I met because we were both finalists in the National Photographic Portrait Prize, and we have remained friends. So I knew she was going to be there, and I didn't know anybody else. But apart from that, it wasn't that I was nervous about, because I can make friends anywhere. It was more just the logistics and doing this long haul trip by myself. I mean, I've traveled to Europe many times by myself in my 20s and 30s, but I haven't been away like that, where I've had to navigate international stuff for a long time. So anyway, I managed. I only missed one flight because that wasn't my fault. It was just the way the timings worked out. Our flight was delayed. So, but it all worked out in the end, and I got there safe and sound. I will admit, Las Vegas was a massive shock for me, just having all the poker machines, slot machines, they call them, in your face right upon arrival when you're in the airport. You're collecting your bags, and there's poker machines right there. And then you get to your hotel, and the lobby is a casino, literally where you go to check in. There's poker machines all around. It's a massive casino, smoke everywhere. So, of course, being a Canberran, living in the capital of Australia, it's such a clean environment. You hardly see anybody smoking these days. So it was kind of in my face, and I didn't immediately like Vegas, but over the 10 days I was there, well, roughly including travel, I sort of saw it for what it was, and I started to appreciate it. And I also took the time to take a trip to the desert, the Red Rock Canyon in the Mojave Desert. That helped me come back down to earth and really appreciate what Vegas was as far as a city, as far as the desert, and see the two sides of it. So that was quite enjoyable. So how did I make the most of this 5-day photographers conference? Well, there was a lot to consume, and there was a lot to learn. Over the days, you were able to attend summits. Like, there was 3 summits. There was a business summit, a lighting summit, and a portrait summit. They were all on at the same time, so you did have to choose between those. That was a really hard choice because I wanted to be in all of them, but I decided to go into the business summit. In that summit, there were speakers. Most of them were wedding photographers, and a couple of them were family portrait photographers. And basically, if I was to summarize what the majority of them spoke about, it was around customer service and the client experience and the importance that every client you serve, their job is to bring you another client. And if we keep that in mind, then we know that our main job is not only to take photos, but is to make that client experience a 10 out of 10 experience so that they tell their friends about you and then it turns into another paying customer. Apart from these summits, there were talks, there were demonstrations, there were photo walks. The photo walks were extras to pay, and you bring your camera and it was like a small group workshop. And they were all around the hotel, the Rio Hotel. I kind of wish I did one of those because when I walked past, they had really awesome models. Sometimes there was a wedding couple, which doesn't interest me, but they also had people dressed up as costumes, which made really cool portraits. So that would have been cool, but to be honest, I was not going to carry my camera around, and I'm not really looking to build my portfolio in that space. So that was the decision I made, but it did look really cool. Apart from that, there was lots of parties to give you the opportunity to network and make lifelong friendships. I did that. You know that networking is my superpower. So I made heaps of new friends. And even because of that, I have worked with somebody already to help me upskill in retouching because the guy I met there and became friends with, he is a master retoucher. So we've remained in touch and I've hired him since then. Not only that, I made heaps of friends that I learned about how their business runs, American style. And I think that's really important for me to dive into that and to, suss out what sort of challenges they're facing, what trends they're currently in. And what I noticed, a lot of photographers over there that were at this portrait, wedding and portrait conference were boudoir photography. That's really popular over there as well as boudoir. You may not even know what boudoir is. Sorry, I'll explain. It's women or men, dressed in their lingerie, in their sort of sleepwear, kind of sexy style portraiture. Um, it's designed to be empowering, to have body positivity, and sometimes they do it, as a gift for their partner. Sometimes they do it for themselves to empower themselves and accept their body where it's at. So that's a very popular niche over there. Also, senior photography is popular. So I learned a lot about that because many of the women I met, they did senior portraits. So it was interesting to learn about how that business runs. Um, Apart from that, I took so many notes, and a lot of that information I'll be sharing with my audience through my email newsletter, through podcasts, through some of my classes and trainings. And for me, it was a business trip. It wasn't just for me to have my dream come true and meet Annie Leibovitz. It was for me to make the most of it for my business. It was a claimable expense. And, I learned, I took notes, I networked. Not only that, I was able to have an opportunity to record a podcast. And sometimes when you see an opportunity in front of you, if you're brave enough, you will go and make that opportunity happen. So for me, inside the Fujifilm trade show, I could see that there was a podcast stage, and I also knew about this through the schedule of events that they sent out. And I thought, oh, you must have to be, one of the big top, American podcasters to be invited to be on this stage. But it just so happened that one of the days I was in the trade show and I decided just to go up to the producer and ask her about it. And she said, well, basically, the podcast stage is full at the moment, but tomorrow there's capacity at lunchtime. It's free. I don't know why it's free, but I will get back to you and find out if it's available for a recording. I can't promise you anything, she said. About 2 hours later, she gave me a buzz and she said, Grace, that spot is yours if you'd like it. I was like, oh my God, how exciting. I get to do a live podcast recording on stage at WPPI with a live audience, mind you. So that was really cool. But the problem was I I didn't know who to interview. I'd made lots of friends, but everyone was so busy going to classes, going to workshops, doing their own thing. So I enlisted my trusty friend Heidi, who knew everybody, and she was one of the judges over there. I enlisted her to help me find three guests because there was four microphones. Sophie, I'm recording now. Can you please be quiet? Okay, do it quietly. So within a few hours, I only had a few hours to book this because it was going to be lunchtime the following day. So she got me three of her friends. One of them I had already met, so I felt comfortable. And then the others I hadn't. So I was frantically researching them while attending some parties after the conference was over. There was two parties I was going to that night. And I was at the parties and I'm trying to, send them DMs and trying to coordinate this and research and think about the questions I was going to ask early the next day. Anyway, I managed to pull it off. We did a great recording. You can find it inside the show notes, and also it's only a couple of episodes before this one. But I loved interviewing three US based photographers. I learned a lot about how their business runs and the things that they consider when it comes to being business owners. So I encourage you to go and listen to that. But the point of that is to show you if you see an opportunity, you've got to grab it with both hands. For me, I was braver probably than I usually am here in my own hometown. I wanted more for myself while I was there because when you pay attention. And I paid thousands and thousands of dollars to be there. Not the conference itself, that was only 100 USD, but the flights over there, the accommodation, everything was just multiple thousands of dollars. So there was more on the line. And I knew I didn't want to disappoint myself by not making the most of every opportunity that was available to me. And the cool thing is, when I arrived at my hotel, the Rio Hotel, there was this massive wall sign, sort of, stuck on the wall that said, "We've got big plans for you." And when I read that, when I first arrived in Vegas, I thought, wow, that message is just for me. I felt it. And so, yes, there was big plans for me over there, but I also took the opportunities and made opportunities for myself. Aside from that, there was a massive trade show over there, and I got connected with Adobe and Evoto and Imagine and all these other platforms and softwares that we use and products. And I got to talking to a number of them. Also recorded that for podcast just in the corridor. It was quite noisy, but I still did it. I did it regardless. And I thought I'll figure out the audio later. But I ended up recording and having a good opportunity with Adobe and building a relationship with Meredith from Adobe, who's been there, like 20 years or something. So it's important for me, and I've done this my entire career, building relationships with suppliers. I'm good friends with Nikon. I'm an ambassador for ISO, the monitor company that makes our computer monitors, and building these relationships with Evoto, Adobe, Imagine, all those other ones, that's not necessarily for my gain, but it's just for community. It's for me to understand these platforms so I can pass on knowledge to my community. And in the past, opportunities have come up for me. I've taught workshops with ISO. They've paid me to teach a workshop at the National Portrait Gallery. I've had opportunities with Nikon to speak for them. They've paid me to do a speaking engagement. And it's all because the trade shows I've attended and the relationships I've built along my career. Aside from the trade show, there is also the Icon Awards at the WPPI conference. And the Icon Awards are live judged at the conference during the week. And a couple of my friends are judges there. So you got to watch the live judging. And the purpose of you watching how judges describe images is so that you can learn how to talk about your own work and your own images. And when you see 5 judges sitting all together talking about one image, it is very intriguing to see how they can all describe the same thing in different ways. and it teaches you new vocabulary, new ways of understanding an image. So that's super valuable. I encourage you, if you're looking for more photography prizes this year, to go and check out the Icon Awards. It's mainly portraiture and weddings, but there is a creative category as well where people are doing heavily photoshopped and AI based images. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's a really cool awards because you win trophies, you win major proper prizes like cameras, camera bags, hard drives, etc. So they put on a really good show, and at WPPI they had the awards ceremony. I didn't attend that because I didn't enter, and I just didn't want to go. So they really elevate this prize. So it's a good one to be part of. Now, the moment that I went over there for, the day we got to see Annie Leibovitz live on stage. So it started with me getting up super uber early, even though I was so exhausted from traveling, from attending WPPI day in, day out, parties every night, and then getting up early the next morning. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to have to suck it up and get up early, even though I didn't want to. 5 a.m. alarm clock, get in line around 6 o'clock, had a little bit of breakfast with me. There was already about 15 people in line, so I wasn't the first one. And she wasn't going to be on stage till about 9:30 a.m. So there was so much time in line. But you know what? It went super quick. I talked to everybody, made heaps of new friends, and once we were in line, I thought that would secure me a front row seat. But in fact, that was the line to get one of the 100 unsigned copies of her brand new book. And I wanted to get her book so that I could meet her so that she could sign it for me in person. So me and the guy next to me had to separate, make a deal. You go and get the book. Here's the money. Go and get my book. I'll reserve our spots and secure us a front row seat. So we did that. We went our separate ways and then we came back. And then by the time 9 o'clock came around, all my other friends started popping up out of nowhere, trying to push in. And I was so focused that day. Nothing was going to stop me and get in my way of getting a front row seat to see Annie. So I said, you know what? What happens in front of me is a no-go. You are definitely not getting in front of me. But what happens behind me, negotiate with the people behind. And so all my friends ended up being in the front row with me in the end. So that was really nice. And I was super buzzing. We finally got in the room. The energy was high. Music was pumping, all my favorite songs. I was just really living it up and just thinking, I'm living my best life right now. And I kind of tapped into my 20-something-year-old self who had read Annie's book at work. And that was the first real time I got to connect with her properly, was through this book. And she inspired me to be a portrait photographer. I also imagined myself being a celebrity portrait photographer like her, but of course, that kind of didn't really happen in the way that she does it, but still. She encouraged me to really understand portraiture and storytelling through an image of a person in 2D. So meeting her would have been a dream. We're in the front row. They finally call her in. The energy was high, super, super high. And the room was full of people. There was even an overflow room. So there's probably about 2,000 people there. And she gets on stage and she makes a funny joke about Vegas and about her brain being Swiss cheese from her time at Rolling Stone magazine. And she proceeds to say, I'm just here to show you my book and to promote my book. So you don't even have to go out and buy it. And I had literally just spent $150 on her new book. But anyway, she took us through every single page of the book, page by page, portrait by portrait. It was a little bit dry. There wasn't as many stories as many of us wanted to hear. And there wasn't much information or context around the images, which was a bit of a shame, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. She told a few stories, but not as many and not much sort of insight as we were hoping for. And then after that, she sat down with the host, Sally, and Sally asked her some questions, and then they opened it up to the audience. I had prepared a question because my business coach said, Grace, on the day, make sure you have a question. You put your hand up straight away, you get first in line. My friend Mark, he noticed the microphone in the corridor and he said, Grace, if you're going to ask a question, go up now before anyone gets there. So I was first in line to the microphone, first row to see her, and I asked my question. They opened it up and I said, Hey Annie, I'm Grace. I came from Australia to see you today. And then I asked, how did you go about building your personal brand so that you could book celebrity clients before you built your reputation? And so she answered that question. You can go to my Instagram feed and you will see her answer to that question. But apart from that, then once she only answered my question and one other person, and then they cut it away and there was no more questions. So I got super lucky. But I also made the luck because I showed up, I got up early, I put myself in the room, and I committed to winning that day. And so the next phase was to line up again inside the room and have her sign our books personally. So there was a huge line for that, 100 people, and you weren't allowed to take photos. You weren't allowed to have a photo with her. You had to have a tag with what message you wanted, and mine just basically says for Grace and then her signature. And we had a chat, and I said, I came from Australia. My name's Grace, and I'm really excited to meet you. And she said, Oh, you're crazy to come all that way to see me. And then she gave me some recommendations on where to travel to while I was in Vegas. So it was just really lovely to see her in real life, hear her voice, hear a few stories she told Sally when she sat down with her. And I really began to understand that she's a photographer who works hard and who's dedicated to doing this her entire life. She's been on quite a journey from working for Rolling Stone magazine, going on assignment work when she was doing documentary style photography. And she's really had a detailed and lengthy and successful career we've all seen. But she just showed me that dedication really does pay off. I'm really inspired by people who dedicate themselves to one career, and I see myself doing that too. So that's really enlightening for me. What I realized is she isn't really the educated type. She wasn't there to be a mentor. She wasn't there to guide us or, inspire us on our journey. She was there to share a little bit about what she's doing and that she's an avid bookmaker. That's her passion. And, she said a few other things here and there, but it was an epic day. I was buzzing afterwards, and I'm just really grateful that I put myself in that room. I made my dream come to life. But this episode is just basically to show you that as photographers, we really have to stretch ourselves. And sometimes that means investing in our education, investing in travel, investing in time, investing in friendships to, really take yourself to the next phase of your career. For me, coming back from WPPI has really put a fire in my belly. It has really pushed me forward as a thought leader in the photography space and as an educator. Seeing a lot of influencers be invited to speak, and a lot of them I followed on YouTube and Instagram, and seeing them there and meeting them made me realize, you know what? I need to lift my game, to build my visibility so that be accountable to myself that I can be there too. And I deserve to be visible. I deserve to be heard. I have a lot to offer. I have a lot to share. And what am I doing about it? Like hustle harder, share more for my community. I met a lovely girl there who I'd followed on Instagram for a long time. She is an educated Jessica Whitaker, and she was kind enough to do a podcast episode in the corridor with me, as well as some other people that I met along the way and became friends with. They did podcast episodes with me as well. And I could have easily held myself back and said, oh, well, look, the audio is going to be bad. Look, we can't just do it in the corridor. That would be just ridiculous. But I kind of had to capture the opportunity on the fly. These people were busy. Everyone was busy. This whole conference was back-to-back classes, workshops, talks, opportunities, meeting people. There was just people everywhere. And I had to take the opportunity while it was there. And Jessica, I approached her a couple of times, to be fair, And the second time I said, no, look, I'm not going to let you say no. Let's just do it in the corridor, 5 minutes of your time. Doesn't have to be a long episode. And she was kind enough to do that for me. And I'll be releasing that one as well. So look, just really put yourself out there. You've got opportunities in front of you, and just seek out some new ways to be in the photography community, because once you have a community, they take you along with you, and it really can help you flourish and enjoy the industry so much more. So there you go. Check out WPPI, sign up to their mailing list so you can get an invitation next year and see if you would like to attend. Also, check out the Icon Awards and follow along and subscribe to the podcast so you can see a lot of the other WPPI guests that I interview on the Photo Diaries podcast. All right, friends, if you haven't already, sign up to my newsletter because I've got a new membership coming up. I've got heaps more marketing and business workshops coming up that I'd love you to join, and lots more resources for photographers. So sign up to the mailing list so you don't miss out. All right, until next time, bye-bye. That's it for today's episode. If you found it valuable, I invite you to leave a review so more people can find this podcast, or simply subscribe to be notified when each new episode drops. Until next time, see you later.